Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I've just finished recording two mini reviews, one of the movie Belfast and one of the movie The Power of the Dog. I'll be posting those separately. To be quite honest, I prefer doing it this way, this sort of like conversational style rather than sitting in front of the camera trying to talk about movies and trying to remember casts, plot lines and all that sort of thing. So we'll see how it develops, but just to quickly sum up, Belfast, absolutely brilliant, could not fault it. Have a look at the review, you'll see how much I really enjoyed that one. Standout scene in that one, any scene with the kid and his grandpa, and the final one of the final scenes, which is a karaoke with the father singing Everlasting Love by the Love Affair, which is always one of the most uplifting tunes ever. And uplifting pretty much describes Belfast as I saw it. I thought it was absolutely wonderful. Contender for Best Picture Oscar. If it doesn't win it, something's wrong. The other one was Power of the Dog, a really intense Western psychological drama. It would have been better calling it Power of the Slog, because it was a bit of an hard slog, but it was worth it. It's an absolutely brilliant movie. I did have a couple of issues with it, which I do go into on the review if you want to have a look at that. But on the whole, absolutely amazing movie, really, really good, and I can see why it's getting all the acclaim that it's getting ahead of the Oscars. So, right, what have I been up to this week? One bit of news I've heard, which I thought was quite interesting. There's a remake, well, I say a remake, a reboot of a classic movie coming out this year. I believe it's going to be on Paramount Plus. It's a movie from 1975. To me, it's an absolute classic and probably shouldn't be touched with a barge pole. But I suppose part of me is curious to see what they do with it. It was a David Bowie movie. I believe it was his first full-length feature film, The Man Who Fell to Earth, directed by Nicholas Roeg. One of the weirdest, strangest movies ever. But I thought it was brilliant. I do need to catch up with it again. I've actually got a copy on Blu-ray here that I need to watch and basically reacquaint myself with it. But apparently they're turning this into a series, so I can't imagine what this is going to look like. To me, there was only one person that could play this role, and that was Bowie. I believe Mick Jagger was approached, but he turned it down. And eventually there was somebody else, but I can't remember who it was. Somebody else was approached about it and they turned it down as well. They offered it to Bowie and it worked out absolutely superb. He was just perfect for it. It was done in 1974, and he pretty much held on to the persona that he created in The Man Who Fell to Earth as the Thin White Duke, and he held on to that for about 3 years. You know what Bowie was like, he was constantly reinventing himself, and the Thin White Duke was basically a character that was very similar to the one he played in The Man Who Fell to Earth. So I'll be curious to see what they do with it. But to be honest, I'm not holding that much hope on this one. I think this is definitely one that I'm going to be saying, do you know what? I'll watch the original movie. I've mentioned this to one of the guys at work, and I don't think he was overly impressed with the thought of it either. So we'll see what comes of that. But there was another interesting thing that happened this week. I got talking about classic movies. Let me just pop this down. Here we go. Let me just start with this one. The Warriors. One of my colleagues got the chance to watch it in full, and I quote, one of the most unrealistic movies I have ever seen. Yeah, I'll put that one down there. We'll come back to that. Try this one. The Outsiders. Now this is the movie that pretty much kicked off the Brat Pack. You've got C. Thomas Howell, Matt Dillon, Ralph Macchio, who was the Karate Kid, Patrick Swayze, Rob Lowe, Diane Lane, Emilio Estevez, Tom Cruise, for Christ's sakes, Leif Garrett. You couldn't get a better cast than that for a movie about 50s gangs. I haven't seen this in a long time, so I really do need to watch that to see whether the quote that I got on this one is justified or not. The quote that I got for this one was, like the Goonies, but without the adventure. You know who you are. Like the Goonies without the adventure. How much more simplified could you make that? But we'll come back to that. Amazing. What have I been buying this week? We'll start with this, The Man Who Fell to Earth. I've just been talking about this a few minutes ago. Again, I need to reacquaint myself with this one. I haven't seen it for quite a while. And ahead of the planned remake or reboot, turning it into a TV series, I really need to have a look at this and see whether it basically matches up to how I remember it, which is many years ago when I watched this. But I'm looking forward to having a look at that. And I also want to have a read of this. I found this on Amazon, Earthbound, and it's basically the story of the making of The Man Who Fell to Earth. And I think I could get some good background information on the movie from this. So I've already read the first chapter. Fascinating stuff. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into that. The other one I bought, and I mentioned this one the other week, Flash Gordon. Now there's a documentary on, I believe it's Netflix or is it Prime, called Life After Flash. Very similar to the one that I talked about, it was either last week or the week before, when I talked about Flight of the Navigator, and there's a movie called Life After the Navigator, which follows the cast and crew after the making of the movie. Life After Flash is a very similar thing. It is basically the story of the cast and crew, mostly Sam Jones, who played Flash Gordon, and what happened to it afterwards. So I'm looking forward to watching that, and also the Life After Flash documentary to see what happened to him after that. So that'll be a good one. And this is also a 40th anniversary one. You've got loads of special features on the back. If I just hold that there, you can freeze frame it or whatever you do. Hang on, move. There you go. Right. The other one I got hold of, this was a few weeks ago, but for some reason I've not shown it. I'm planning on doing a season on controversial movies, movies that have had problems with the censors over the years. It's a subject I'm absolutely fascinated by. I've got quite a few books on the subject that I've read, and this movie is one of the most controversial ever, Soldier Blue. Again, I need to watch this again. I haven't seen this for a while, but I do remember it vividly. It stars Peter Strauss and Candice Bergen. Made in 1970. I don't know who directed it. It's very Sam Peckinpah in its approach. All I can remember is for the first hour and 45, you've got what is basically a fairly savage, sort of violent Western, but pretty standard. And then in the last 20 minutes, it absolutely explodes into an orgy of the most horrific violence. It's all to do with the raid on a Native American village. It's a true story, based on a true story, on one of the most, as they describe it, one of the most foul episodes in American history. And it really, really is shown to be that in this movie. It's a tough watch. The difficulty with this is finding an uncut version. I believe I've got it with this. Most of the running times that I've seen on DVDs and Blu-rays is about 105 minutes, which is obviously an hour and 45. This is an hour and 55, so it's had a good 10 minutes worth of footage reinserted. So I'm looking forward to having that one, but I'm not kidding myself how difficult that is going to be to watch. There's other movies in the season that I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be tackling movies like A Clockwork Orange, Straw Dogs, The Devils, Last Tango in Paris. Many movies that I know have had problems with the censors, so I'm looking forward to getting into those. The other thing I'm setting myself up for, I talked about Belfast and Power of the Dog earlier. The Oscars are on, I believe, March the 25th. What I would like to do, if I can get through them, is to watch all of the Best Picture contenders. Now, I did have a list here. I've misplaced it. But there are quite a few movies. There's West Side Story, Power of the Dog and Belfast, which obviously I've already watched. Coda, which is to do with deaf parents. Nightmare Alley, which I'm really looking forward to watching. That's Guillermo del Toro's latest horror movie. There are quite a few. I believe King Richard is one, which is a Will Smith movie, based on the story of the Williams sisters, Venus and Serena, tennis players, and Will Smith plays their father. So I'm looking forward to having a look at that one, and also the rest of them. So I'm going to try and get through all of the Oscar contenders for this year, and then pick my personal favourite. So far, I have to say it's Belfast. I absolutely loved that movie. I will definitely be watching it again. I just thought it was absolutely superb. Great soundtrack. You got a lot of Van Morrison tracks on there, and also, as I said earlier, that karaoke at the end with Jamie Dornan singing "Everlasting Love" was just brilliant. So that's my favourite so far, but I will try and get through the rest of them. Bin It or Keep It. Oh my God, this is going to be a controversial one. Tom Cruise, The Mummy. I didn't even make it to the end, I've got to confess. I always promised that I wouldn't be horrible about films, but this, to me, was an absolute mess. Car crash. I think it's very loosely based on the Brendan Fraser late 90s Mummy, and also the Universal Studios version of the Mummy. It isn't a patch on the Brendan Fraser version. I think this was also planned to be the first in a series of monster movies based on old Universal movies. They were going to call it the Dark Universe, so you would have had Frankenstein, Dracula, you'd have had the Invisible Man, which I believe has already been done, and also the Creature from the Black Lagoon, which I'd have been really up for watching. I love the Creature from the Black Lagoon, the original version. I'd have been very curious to see what they did with it. But this one, oh dear, Tom Cruise. That's pretty much all you can say. You've got Tom Cruise in there. You've got Russell Crowe. As I say, it's pretty much a remake of the 90s Mummy. It is a bit more violent. The special effects are obviously a little better because it was done sort of 20 years on. But this movie, it borrows so heavily from other films, and it is so blatantly obvious. The death kiss from Life Force, the 1985 Tobe Hooper film, that's used many, many times in this. And Tom Cruise has also got a dead friend that visits him and tries to tell him that a curse has been put on him. Sound familiar? Sound very sort of an American Werewolf in London? And that's what this film is. It borrows very heavily from other horror movies. As I say, I made it through an hour of it, and I turned it off, which is rare for me. I probably will watch the end of it just out of curiosity to see how it finishes, but it absolutely did nothing for me. It had mixed reviews when it came out, but most people did not like it, and the critics hated it. And to be honest, I'm not surprised. So I'm sorry, Cruise, Mr. Cruise, Tom, you're going in the bin. Off to the charity shop with you. So, right, that's pretty much it for this week. I'll let you get on with your Sunday. I'll be back again next week with a fresh load of nonsense. I'm going to get some more movies watched. My priority this week is going to be the two Nightmare Alleys. I don't only want to watch the Guillermo del Toro version. I want to watch the original black and white version starring Tyrone Power. There's a real old Hollywood actor's name. Tyrone Power and Joan Blondell, upon which the remake is based. And the black and white movie was based on a novel that came out in 1946. The movie came out in 1947, so I'm looking forward to trying to get through to those next week, and I'm going to also try to watch Coda, which is the one about the deaf parents. So that sounds good. and there'll be all sorts of other bits and pieces, I'm sure. So thanks for joining me, folks. Really appreciate it. If you've enjoyed the video, just give me a thumbs up and also subscribe. That would be absolutely amazing. Have a great weekend, what's left of it, folks, and I'll talk to you all again next weekend. Take care, folks. Bye bye.